The United States owns 11.7 million square kilometers of ocean. That's more sea than any country on Earth. It is also more water than the land area of all 50 states combined, and almost nobody has ever seen it drawn on a map. Now, 39% of that ocean already belongs to somebody. On a world map, you would never know it. The sea is the blank part, the bit the labels sit on. But those borders are as real as the ones on land, and they cover roughly 141 million square kilometers of water. They are simply never printed. The number that carved it all up is 370 kilometers. That is 200 nautical miles, the distance every coastline now projects out to sea, under a treaty signed in Jamaica in 1982. Inside that zone, the coastal state owns the fish, the oil, and the seabed. So the real prize was never the land, it was the coast. Second place is France, with 9.5 million square kilometers. Now, this is not a country you picture as a sea power, and it isn't one exactly. Only 3% of that ocean lies off the mainland coast. The other 97% sits on the far side of the planet. France draws 4.5 million square kilometers of that from French Polynesia alone. The islands themselves come to 3,521 square kilometers of dry land, about the size of Cornwall. Around them lies an ocean larger than the European Union. Nearly half of the French maritime empire rests on a scattering of coral and volcanic rock. Then there is Kiribati. All of its land together comes to 81 square kilometers, roughly the size of New York City. From that, Kiribati controls 3.4 million square kilometers of the Pacific. That works out at about 4,000 square kilometers of ocean for every square kilometer of home. Tuvalu goes further still. 9 islands, 26 square kilometers of land, and a population you could seat in a football stadium. Its ocean territory runs to 753,000 square kilometers. The ratio there is about 29,000 to 1. Tuvalu is less a country with a coastline than a coastline with a country attached. Britain sits 8th, with 4.1 million square kilometers, but the water around Britain itself accounts for only 727,000 of that. Pitcairn Island, home to a few dozen people, generates more ocean than the British mainland does. So does Tristan da Cunha. The empire went away and left the sea behind. Japan holds up 400,000 square kilometers of ocean, with a single reef called Okina Torishima. It sits 1,700 kilometers south of Tokyo. At high tide, 2 lumps of coral break the surface, covering less ground between them than a parking space. Japan has spent around $600 million encasing them in concrete and steel. Without them, all that water would belong to nobody. A proper island earns you 431,000 square kilometers of ocean. A rock earns you almost nothing. Everything turns on which one you happen to own, and the treaty settles it in 21 words. A rock that cannot sustain human habitation or economic life of its own gets no zone at all. The gap between the two is about 278 times. Britain learned that the expensive way. Rockall is a granite pinnacle in the North Atlantic, 17 meters tall and about 25 meters across. Britain annexed it in 1955, the last territorial addition the country ever made. Then in 1997, on ratifying the treaty, Britain quietly dropped its 200-mile claim around it. A rock, it turned out, stays a rock. China claims most of the South China Sea, and around $3.4 trillion of trade crosses it every year. In 2016, a tribunal in The Hague ruled that the claim had no legal basis. It went further. Every disputed feature in the Spratly Islands counted as a rock, entitled to no ocean at all. China called the ruling null and void, and carried on regardless. 99% of the world's internet traffic between continents runs under the sea. More than 1.5 million kilometers of cable lie on the seabed to carry it. The oceans also give up about 92 million tons of wild fish a year, and 3 billion people depend on them for protein. This is why anyone fights this hard over empty water. It was never empty. Beyond every zone, 61% of the ocean belongs to nobody at all. These are the high seas, open to everyone and governed by almost no one. Barely 1% of that water is properly protected. On the abyssal plain between Hawaii and Mexico lies a field of metal nodules, the size of potatoes, and 31 companies already hold licenses to go and look. 92 countries have now ratified a treaty for that water, agreed in 2023 and the first of its kind. It took nearly 20 years to write. It gives the high seas something the land has had for centuries, rules about who may take what and who has to ask first. 753,000 square kilometers of ocean belong to 11,000 people on 9 atolls, a stretch of sea about the size of Chile. That is the honest answer. By area, the ocean belongs to America, and by reach to France, but a scattering of specks holds a great deal of the rest. The map you grew up with shows the world's borders, then stops at the water, which is where most of the world actually is.